Now, the balcony scene is an absolute tour de force. It has some of the most remarkable writing I've ever read in any play. It's genuinely charged with such incredible imagery and language that I think it's a truly staggering achievement and very well worthy of its fame. So when Romeo arrives, of course, Juliet is out in the balcony, and we begin to get her very, very famous monologue. The sort of words that even the most drunken, uncultured boozer in your tavern knows. Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou, Romeo? As they drunkenly will mock. Or at least they did in my local pub. Maybe that's just a me thing. I don't know. But yes, Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou, Romeo? You can see Juliet in this moment, all of a sudden, who was once before entirely the instrument of her own family, trying to deconstruct this feud, trying to reason herself into why can't she love this man? What is really stopping her? And you see Juliet begin to deconstruct her family name and Romeo's name and what it really means and why it should stop the two of them from being together. When she says, "Thou art thyself, though not a Montague." What's Montague? Is it not hand, nor foot, nor arm, nor face? Oh, be some other name belonging to a man. What is in a name? That which we call a rose, by any other word would smell as sweet. And so, of course, the thing itself is beautiful regardless of its name. A rose still smells wonderful and looks beautiful, even if it were not called a rose. And this, of course, comes back to the importance of language and wordplay, because the name Capulet is, of course, not merely a family name, and especially not that of a noble family. It is history, it is legacy, it is responsibility, it's duty, it's obligation, it is nobility and pride, and many, many other things besides. And Juliet has to weigh up whether she looks at all of those things and whether or not they hold up and should be chosen over love. I think it's also important to point out that during the balcony scene, for a girl who is just about to become 14, Juliet shows a remarkable amount of maturity for someone of her age. And of course, Juliet's language and level of maturity is very unnatural in someone who is just 13 years old. In the poem that Shakespeare is adapting from, in Arthur Brooks' poem, Juliet is actually older. It is Shakespeare's choice to make her a younger character, to make her nearly 14. And what's more as well, unlike Brooks' poem, which takes place over the space of 9 months, Shakespeare compresses all of this down into something that takes place over merely about 5 days. In fact, it's a very tightly time-kept play, where there are constant references both to the dawn and the night, to the sense that you can actually track the goings-on day by day throughout the play in a way that simply isn't possible in some of his other plays, where the timekeeping, such as in Othello, is clumsier, let's say. But even though Juliet is young, she is not unaware of the things that young men will say to take advantage of women and manipulate their feelings to satisfy their more lusty desires. And it's a remarkable sign of maturity that Juliet basically tells him that he must marry her, that she's not going to surrender herself to him that night. And what's more as well, she wishes for an actual vow from Romeo that this will be everlasting. When she says, "Oh, swear not by the moon, the inconstant moon, that monthly changes in her circled orb, lest that thy love prove likewise variable." And if there's one thing that seems to be the case about Romeo at this point in the story, it's that his love does seem to be very variable. And she goes on to say that, well, do not swear. Although I joy in thee, I have no joy of this contract tonight. It is too rash, too unadvised, too sudden, too like the lightning which doth cease to be, ere one can say it lightens. Sweet good night. This bud of love, by summer's ripening breath, may prove a beauteous flower when next we meet. So, of course, the intention is that this can become a genuine courtship and that the two can continue to see one another. And so let's not vow on things just yet. Let us rather prove to one another that this is not merely something fleeting and that it is made to last. But Romeo does want the exchange of her vow for his. And of course, once again, Juliet remarks, well, you actually already had my vow when you heard me speaking my thoughts into the night before I knew that you were even there. And so you see the two of them have this remarkable connection with one another. And the fact that the nurse in this scene keeps calling her, drawing her away from the balcony, is a wonderful physical representation of how the family keeps drawing Juliet away, distracting her, taking her out of this moment and away from this celestial love, right? This heavenly love. And so before they depart one another for the night, they're told that Juliet will send someone to him at 9 o'clock the next morning. From there, they can, of course, speak to one another further. And so Romeo goes to visit Friar Lawrence. Now, Friar Lawrence is, I think, a fantastic character again, to the surprise of no one. Just to say, I don't actually think there is a bad character in this entire play. I think it has really, really strong character presences. And the nurse is another one who I've just remembered I didn't really talk about at the time of her introduction. So I will talk about her after Friar Lawrence, because in many ways they represent similar things. You have Friar Lawrence, who works as a sort of surrogate father figure. And what's more as well, when Romeo comes to meet Friar Lawrence in Act 2, Scene 3, I believe it is, where Lawrence is introduced, Lawrence already knows about Rosaline, which means that Romeo has told Friar Lawrence more about the affections of his heart and his emotional state than he has to his own father. Lawrence knows Romeo better. Lord Montague knows him. And likewise, the nurse knows Juliet better than her own parents. Now, there are many reasons for this. One of the things that the nurse alludes to in one of her first scenes is that she once had her own daughter who seems to have gone by the name of Susan, and it's only mentioned briefly in passing, but it's inferred that this daughter passed away from when she was also very young. In having this young girl, Juliet, who is of a similar age, you can see the nurse taking on this very, very maternal, very protective role, where she is more loyal to the happiness of Juliet than she actually is to the Capulet family itself. And obviously a lot of this seems to be born out of perhaps some emotional trauma that she never got to experience this stage of life with her own daughter. And so it goes some way to explaining the extraordinary lengths that the nurse goes to and the risk that she takes in basically becoming the messenger and the go-between for these two young lovers, because she cares about Juliet's happiness so dearly. Friar Lawrence is a man of great wisdom, and he understands people very well. When he's introduced, he's gardening, he's taking weeds and flowers and plants and putting them into his basket, and he gives these few lines where he says, "In man as well as herbs, grace and rude will, and where the worser is predominant, full soon the canker death eats up that plant." And so Friar Lawrence understands not to deal in absolutes. He understands that things are complicated and good can often get intertwined up with evil, and that just because something seems bad, it doesn't mean that there isn't something of value within to take from it. And that is exactly how he approaches Romeo's confession about his newfound love for Juliet, though he understands that and is very skeptical of the fickleness of Romeo's nature, given that he was just simply saying, obviously mere days ago, about how he loves Rosaline and Rosaline's the one for him. He also understands that there is something kind of natural and sweet about all of this, and the fact that Romeo is, at the end of the day, just a young man, and the fact that his love can be put towards some practical good, because this love will be capable of healing the feud that currently upsets all of Verona.
If you enjoyed this piece of premium content from the Lotus Eaters, head to our website where you can find more.